The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, October 24, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA, and the Raphael Conference Room at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm here for the 2019 Mass Torts Conference. On the program today, Trump's alibis fall apart. The Ukrainians knew the funds were withheld, and records show that Trump's actually been looking to cut anti-corporate funding. Meanwhile, after denial comes the anger. Brooks Brothers riot part dumb. Rudy Giuliani lawyers up, and speaking of the stages of grief, Zuckerberg's going to have to let go of crypto dreams he's had as he was destroyed in congressional hearings yesterday. Supreme Court lets the Michigan GOP gerrymander stand, reverses the Sixth Circuit. ICE cover-up. U.S. immigration officers destroyed key surveillance footage of a transgender woman who died in ICE custody. And the chief operating officer of the Office of Federal Student Loans quits in disgust and says forgive almost all of it. Meanwhile, Trump lifts 6-day-old sanctions on Turkey as ethnic cleansing begins. And the 3% Titan Klobuchar qualifies for the November 20 debate. Lastly, Elijah Cummings to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol today. All this and more on today's program. Folks, I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, talking to trial lawyers. I have one with me now. Just got to organize one thing. Scott, just give me 10 minutes. Okay. So joining me now is Chris Tizzi. He is are you of counsel of Levin Papantonio?
I am.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, try again.
No, I am of counsel. Thank you very much for having me.
And you have been working on the Johnson & Johnson talcum powder case, or I mean, tell me, just give me the update. What's happening with that?
Well, just on Friday, Sam, the FDA announced that there was that their independent laboratory had found the evidence of asbestos in samples of talcum powder products that Johnson & Johnson had marketed. They pulled the sample that they tested off the shelves, so it's the kind of bottle that you or somebody else might purchase at the store. And as a result, J&J has withdrawn a specific lot of talcum powder products. I really have to say that this comes on the heels of 40 years of denying that there is any potential problem with their flagship product.
Now, so wait a second. So my understanding is that the issue with the talcum powder in the past has not been necessarily asbestos, but it functions like asbestos on some level, or is it that it's a carcinogen?
Well, I think you have to back up a little bit, Sam, and talk a little bit about that this is a product that people pull from the ground. I mean, you go into a mine. When you say you're mining for talc, you're really pulling out of the ground talc and everything that comes with it.
Right.
So it is typically the case that there's asbestos close by, there's nickel, there's chromium, and there are certain tests that they instituted to try and minimize the amount of these known carcinogens in talcum powder in the 1970s, but they really never updated their testing protocol, and so there's always been a concern that the talc you buy is not pure talc. Against that backdrop, for 40 years, you've had researcher after researcher after researcher from Harvard, from different countries, who have found that there's an increased risk for women using talc in ovarian cancer.
Wow. And now my understanding is that has that case been resolved? I mean, or where what's the status? Of this ongoing sort of, I guess, claim. I mean, where are we in terms of?
Well, where we are right now is there have been some trials in various state courts around the country, Missouri, California, Georgia. Most of the cases for legal jurisdictional reasons are pending in the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey. And the judge right now is considering issues relating to whether or not the case can proceed to trial in federal court. So we're kind of at the point where I think a lot of the scientific questions are going to be addressed by the court.
And those scientific questions are, to what extent are the carcinogens in the powder? To what extent did Johnson & Johnson have the ability to know that the testing they did in 1970s is not up to par for today's ability to test? And at what point, I guess, over the course of this past 40 years, should they have retested with new technology and new ability to assess what elements in there might be carcinogenic?
That's really one of the questions. The bigger question is whether or not the use of these powders by women for hygiene are capable of causing ovarian cancer. There are a lot of aspects to that. What I think is really important is that regulators are starting to catch up with what scientists have known for many years. There were recently hearings in the House of Representatives on the question of whether or not this product is really safe. The Canadian FDA has concluded that that it can cause ovarian cancer in some women. The FDA now seems to be starting to step into the breach. What is important is that the judge will consider all of this and let us know whether or not we can proceed to trial on the question of whether talc causes ovarian cancer. The presence of asbestos is part of it. I liken it to a cigarette. We all say cigarettes cause lung cancer. We don't worry about whether a cigarette contains 500 carcinogens.
Right.
Talcum powder contains asbestos, contains fibrous talc, which acts like asbestos, nickel, chromium, all kinds of things that are potential mechanisms, plausible mechanisms for causing ovarian cancer.
For you to get for the plaintiffs to win in this case, what do they have to prove about what Johnson & Johnson did or did not know?
Well, okay, so now we're going to the question of what they knew and when they knew it. How do I say this in a way that I think we have to step back and look at the product we're dealing with here. This is a product, candidly, when I first started the case, I scratched my head and said, this is baby powder. If you can't trust baby powder, what can you trust? I mean, if you have a child, you leave the hospital with your child, a blanket, and baby powder. That's what you leave the hospital with. So I think there's a general reluctance of people to understand that even something like baby powder can be a problem. for the first human study on the question was in 1982. There have been close to 40 studies conducted since 1982, all of which showing that women who use talcum powder products, Johnson & Johnson's baby powder, shower to shower, have a 30 to 60% increased risk of ovarian cancer for baby powder. Okay, and they've known it. They've known about these studies for 40 years. It's remarkable to me that a product that you can go into the Kmart, pull off the shelves, and use on your children on has the ability to cause cancer, and there's not even a statement on the label that says do not use it for personal hygiene.
Wow. And so we're waiting on those cases that have been that are in that
federal court now, and we're waiting. Candidly, what we're waiting for is for Johnson & Johnson to acknowledge that there is a problem, and there has been a problem for 40 years. And instead, what they're doing is they're using their platform to suggest, maybe there was something wrong with the test, maybe there was something, maybe there was cross-contamination in the lab, the kinds of things you typically see. What I'm waiting for them to do is to step up and tell women what the Canadian FDA has suggested. Do not use it for personal hygiene. There's no reason why even there should be a question about the safety of something as ubiquitous as baby powder.
Chris, TC, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I should say that Chris and I have spent a considerable amount of time debating politics over the past couple of nights. Chris, thanks again. I appreciate it. Thanks. Folks, we're going to get to some more interviews in just a moment. But for folks who own a dog, it's very often the most beloved member of your family. I think in some instances, people like their dogs better than they like the other people in their family. But do you have one that's rescued? Do you wonder about what breed it is? Sometimes it's fun to have a dog you don't know anything about. But at other times, you can learn a lot about your dog, not just for fun, but also for the dog's health. The Embark Dog DNA test is the best-in-class dog DNA test. Kelly used it for Edie, and this is what she told me. She said, I received Edie's results from Embark. There's so much information about her. She tested clear for all 171 genetic health conditions they screen for. She's not a carrier or at risk for any of the genetic diseases they test for. There's also a full clinical trait report. So much great news, but more importantly, I can provide the report to her vet, which will provide so much information to help Edie's health as she grows up. If you've listened in the past, you may have heard me mention the story of Gregor, who apparently is it's a dog of a listener, and the dog has been a huge help therapeutically for a member of the family who had trouble with socialization. And when they were able to find out about, use Embark to find the DNA of their dog, Gregor, then their vet changed the dog's diet, and also was able to tell them what possible diseases to look out for. Embark's test is worth it because it's the most comprehensive kit on the market. It's developed by doctors and veterinarians. It tests for over 250 breeds and over 170 genetic health conditions. Apparently, competitors go down to only 12% of a breed's mix detection. Embark's DNA test kit is accurate to a 5% breed component in a mixed breed dog's ancestry. This test will catch the breed's nuances that makes your dog so special. And Embark has an exclusive offer for our listeners. Go to embarkvet.com, use the promo code MAJORITY, to save 15% off your dog DNA test kit. That's embarkvet.com, the promo code majority. All right, joining me now from Levin Papantonio, Matt Schultz is with me. And Matt, when I heard about what you're working on, I was particularly interested because I have a 14-year-old daughter.
Right.
And so, who, I don't want to get to the specifics, but she had a little run-in with vaping at one point with Jules and this and that. But I have to say, the one upshot of the enormous amount of social media that she is involved with is that she is very, very aware that there are problems with vaping that range, I guess, across the spectrum. So just tell us, I mean, where does Juul fit in? I mean, because I've heard of like people dying. That's not directly a function of the Juul. Like where tell me the landscape of the whole vape.
Well, let me start at the beginning. I have two daughters myself, one of whom I'm about to pick up at the airport and take up to Zion to do some hiking with. She's 22, her sister's 20, so step back 5 years. 2014, 2015, pre-Juul world. They're in high school. None of their friends smoke. They don't smoke. They have one kid in their class who smokes cigarettes. They complain about how he stinks all the time because he smokes cigarettes.
Teen smoking rates have plummeted.
They were at the lowest probably since the 1920s. And a lot of success, and a lot of that due to litigation against the tobacco industry, which made them come clean. The documents came out. There was no more denial, no more confusion over the issue. And so we had a generation or two of kids who grew up with that knowledge, and they were down to about 9%.
And let me just also say, you're obviously aware of this, but the Levin Papantonio firm, I mean, Levin was
absolutely
instrumental in forging the AG settlement in Florida, which became a sort of a nationwide
model.
Model
for the AG settlement, the Master Settlement Agreement. And so I've been doing cigarette litigation in Florida since my kids were small. So they got a dad growing up suing the tobacco industry, trying cases against cigarette companies. They don't smoke. Their friends don't smoke. You can stand in 2014 and look forward and think, when my daughters have daughters, cigarettes are done in America. Nicotine is done because, of course, that's all a cigarette is a way to get nicotine. And that's where we were. And then Juul came on the scene. And Juul took a page from Big Tobacco's playbook, the youth marketing piece,
tell
which everyone
folks
has
what
seen.
Juul is, because I mean,
Sure.
I wouldn't have a clue, I don't think, if I didn't have
Right, electronic vaping device. Essentially, you have a liquid solution, propylene glycol, that's infused with nicotine. They put it on a heating element. It vaporizes it, turns it into an aerosol. Looks like smoke. It's not smoke, but it's laden with nicotine. Juul was different. E-cigs have been around since about 2007.
Right.
Were not very prevalent among youth or adults, for that matter. And a lot of the public health community liked the idea of e-cigarettes because they figured they had to be safer than smoking cigarettes.
Right.
But Juul was different, and Juul was different because most nicotine in its free state is alkaline, and it's a freebase. And so most e-cigs were freebasing the way the cigarette industry freebased nicotine way back in the 70s. That was the secret soul of Marlboro, as I think Lorillard called it. Juul did it differently. What they did was add benzoic acid to the mix that reduces the pH. It makes it an acidic aerosol. No real throat hit, very smooth. Unlike a pack of cigarettes, you can't over-smoke it. In other words, you can just hit this thing constantly. They misled people about the amount of nicotine in it. A Juul pod, and this is not lawyers talking, these are people who've done the science on it, contains roughly 36, 38, maybe 40 cigarettes worth of nicotine. So imagine now you have a pack of cigarettes, which a Philip Morris scientist one time called a nicotine delivery device. It is a package of nicotine. A 14-year-old kid, a 12-year-old kid for that matter, cannot smoke 2 packs of Marlboro in a day.
Right, because it's just like physically...
Precisely.
It will physically exhaust you in some way, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's... at one point, I guess the analogy would be if you could drink 3 bottles worth of vodka with it, for most people, by the time you get to the second bottle, you're unconscious.
Right.
But in this instance, it's the all of the physical effects that come with smoking are not involved in Juul, but you get the amount of nicotine that you would.
Right, and you can get even more, which I think is why we see a lot of these seizure and stroke, and I don't know of any of those necessarily being related to Juul, but of course, with Juul's meteoric success, there have been a lot of copycats, and so there's a lot of acidic, low acid, benzoic-based, nicotine salt-based e-cigarettes out there that kids can hit time after time after time, which they couldn't have done with cigarettes 40 years ago or 50 years ago. So nicotine toxicity is a very real concern. The bigger concern, of course, is, as I mentioned before, we were about to have a generation free of nicotine. Instead, we have now, in the words of the CDC, undone all the work of the last 30 years on that, and we now have the highest nicotine use rates that we've probably ever seen among kids.
Wow. And so do you have a sense of what the health implications are of this? I mean, my understanding always was the real problem with smoking is not necessarily the nicotine. Like, you get a nicotine patch and, people want to get off it at one point, but theoretically there was no health implications to it. Are there known health implications for ingesting that much nicotine? I mean, aside for it being obviously highly addictive, what are the health impact? What are like the direct health impacts that
Sure. Well, with nicotine per se, there's some modest cardiovascular risk. I think it would be such that any doctor in good faith could tell someone, look, if you're smoking cigarettes and there are no long-term health implications aside from addiction, which you already have to nicotine, you definitely should switch to e-cigarettes, because the modest cardiovascular risk would outweigh all the risks of cancer, emphysema, et cetera, with cigarettes. There is some notion that nicotine can, it's kind of complex science, but essentially can promote cancer within the body, but again, a very modest risk compared to the risks of combustion cigarettes overall. What we are seeing lately, however, is some literature in animals, kind of like we saw with cigarettes in the early 1950s, that there may in fact be some cancer risks with e-cigarettes themselves, and they seem to be different risks than those that are posed by combustion cigarettes. I think it's going to be a long time before we know. It's going to take a generation of people getting sick, just like it did with cigarettes. It's funny, one of our experts that we put on at trial, often a historian on the marketing and science of tobacco, tells the story of Dr. Oshner, back in the 1920s, calling all of his medical students out of bed at night because they had a lung cancer case. And he said, you'll probably never see another one of these in your lifetime. It was such a rare occurrence that it was that notable. And of course, cigarettes then came on the scene, and we had an epidemic and have an epidemic of lung cancer and many other cancers. Are we going to see that with these cigarettes? We know there are acute risks. We've seen the news over that. Now, it's going to take a long time to tell.
Okay. Tell us about the acute risks and put them in context with what we know about Juul.
Yeah, well, it's difficult because we don't know, no one has done a proper study of, well, how many of these folks who've been having seizures or strokes or lung collapse or these pneumonia-type diseases, the deaths, are these people who are vaping Juul and only Juul? Are they vaping, black market stuff? Are they vaping cannabis?
I can't, I feel like there has been a lot of confusion. I don't know how deliberate, frankly.
Right.
About what was the but for in whatever they were vaping. Was it tainted nicotine packs or THC packs, the black market ones, or was it other people? Is there a consensus at this point? Because there have been quite a few deaths, right?
Right.
How many? Do you know how many deaths?
I think 19 maybe at this point, and about 3,000 illnesses documented. And part of this phenomenon probably has to do with the awareness around it. So this may have been happening for a long time, but if you don't know to look for it, then you're not going to see it, right?
So so we really don't know at this point what has in all those cases, what has made people ill, what has made people die, and is there, when you, I mean, I guess the point is one would think that we would learn the lesson of cigarettes, which is if you have a product that people are ingesting, you should make sure that it's safe first, right?
Right.
I mean, is that basically, I mean...
Right. And there's been a lot of criticism over FDA on the e-cig issue. Of course, they've been overwhelmed with the Tobacco Control Act coming in since 2009 with just new applications for cigarette products. And one of the unfortunate benefits of this crisis is FDA is now, in hyper motion on this. And we're going to see regulation coming, I think, maybe a little late for a lot of kids. Because the big picture to this, Sam, excuse me, is... despite the acute illnesses, what we now have is a generation of kids addicted to nicotine. And it's funny, when I do tobacco trials, we have to call in 190 jurors to get 6 because in the box at the end of the day, because people's opinions are so strong around personal responsibility, because tobacco has touched everybody's life in some way, mostly negative, of course, but then on the other side, a lot of people who feel like, it's free country. If you want to smoke yourself to death, then don't go around suing people when you die, okay?
Right.
But then we go through 2 and 3 week trials, and we've won far more cases than we've lost, and over $1 billion of verdicts across Florida in the last 7 years on this. I think we're going to see this when we get to the bottom of what happened with Juul, because it's no secret they took their marketing page from Big Tobacco, and what they did, and I think this is undeniable at this point, of course they will deny it, and that's why we have lawsuits, is a preconceived plan to addict kids to something that will ultimately make many of them sick and possibly kill them, and leave them with all the problems that all addictions bring later in life, and perhaps leading even to the use of combustion cigarettes down the road if e-cigarettes become heavily regulated. So we've got a nightmare of addiction among our kids, and parents had no idea, and that was not an accident. The design of Juul, it looks like a thumb drive. It is a stealth device.
Right.
It was designed so that it could be
And they have
used
flavors,
in secret.
right?
Oh, of course.
It's all flavored.
Yeah, so they want to say now this is for, the veteran Marlboro or Camel smoker, so they can have a safer way to get their nicotine. We're helping. Well, then why creme brulee? Why advertising through Instagram with young models? Clearly,
right. There's no strawberry
kids.
Flavored.
That's right.
Camel.
And for that matter, they tried that, of course, because make no mistake, the cigarette industry would. And of course, Altria, who owns Philip Morris, has 30-some-odd% of Juul, so they're behind this as well.
Right.
Cigarette industry would still love to get kids smoking. It's just not feasible in this day and age. With Juul, it has become not only feasible but realized. But yes, the 30-year Marlboro smoker who knows he or she is going to be sick one day and wants to quit but compulsively smokes because nicotine is so powerfully addictive does not need creme brulee, nor do they go to Instagram to get their advertising for their next nicotine hit. These guys went after kids and they got them.
And so there's no cases at this point, right? I mean, like, what do you, as an attorney, as a trial lawyer who is, sort of obviously having gone through the work you've done in terms of tobacco, you're obviously incredibly sensitive to these issues and
Right.
the implications of them, because you've worked with, I don't know how many plaintiffs who got hopelessly addicted to cigarettes and
Right.
they've killed themselves with it.
Mostly widows of people who are hopelessly addicted. Right.
And so just, give me a sense of, like, you're seeing this going on there, you start to do research on it, and then what are you doing? Just waiting for the test? Or, like, what capacity, what capacity as a lawyer do you work in at this point?
Well, that's it's interesting, all three, because there is a set of cases. There have been several cases filed, class actions mostly, and I co-chair the class department at Levin Papantonio, so that was our interest. Given our history in tobacco, the current litigation we represent the province of Alberta, Canada, and their healthcare recovery litigation. When we saw that Juul was essentially recreating creating this model, we got interested. Other firms got interested. Class actions got filed, mainly around deceptive marketing over the amount of nicotine that Juul delivers and the fact that they very blatantly targeted kids in this campaign.
And we should say, the only reason why you do that is because you want to really, really addict kids, right? Like if they put in 40 cigarettes worth of nicotine in these small devices, it's not like
making them.
It doesn't save you any money.
Right.
It doesn't enhance the taste. It's
Right.
just literally like, we're selling you more of this highly, highly addictive drug, and you don't even know it. I mean, on some level, it has obviously, hopefully with not nearly the potential for the horror that it's been, but that's like almost like the the OxyContin story, right? Like this is non-addictive, but it turns out to be horribly addictive on some level. Even if you were aware, like, I know there's nicotine in here and it's addictive, you just don't know how much nicotine relative to would be if you sat down to smoke a couple cigarettes.
Yeah, a recent study showed 63% of kids didn't even know Juul had nicotine in it. You know, look, when you look at Juul's marketing, hashtag vaporized, this is hip, it's cool, it's the new cigarette, it's the rebellion, it's the way to separate, identify yourself as distinct from authority, from your parents, just like it was with kids and is to some extent today. But these guys design a device that delivers supremely high amounts of nicotine in a way that can be used over and over and over, in a way that can be used stealthily, and then target their advertising to youth through hashtag marketing, through use of these club parties and whatnot, through use of Katy Perry for that matter. It is sinister, and it is the worst of what we see in industry. So these lawsuits came about, and where we're at right now is we essentially have three types of suits. We've got injury suits, lung injuries, the seizures, strokes, that sort of thing. We have lawsuits for injury for addiction itself, which is, of course, a lifelong injury. It's not a broken leg that heals in a year. We've got a set of opioid-style cases, school districts now bringing claims because they're having to hire security guards, put in surveillance, hire people to help kids and tutor them because of their nicotine addiction. And these are taxpayer expenses that we're bearing because of this sinister campaign that Juul carried out.
Theoretically, you can't sell a Juul to anyone under the age of 18, can you? Or
in theory, sure. In theory, you can't sell a cigarette to anyone under 18, but we all know how that goes. And there's a third track of class actions, which is kind of where this began, for the deceptive marketing over the amount of nicotine, the targeting of kids, etc., and addicting them. And all of those cases in federal court have been consolidated in what's called multi-district litigation. So in mass torts, generally, if you have, a drug that harms thousands of people and thousands of lawsuits are filed, the federal courts will consolidate them all in front of one judge. And we have done that. I think there are 39 cases right now in front of Judge William Orrick in San Francisco, which is where Juul is based. And he is just beginning to get a handle on the case. He'll be appointing leadership over this multi-district litigation following a hearing November 8th. And then the books get opened and we get in and see everything on the inside that they did to make this happen and bring this about.
And then in the meantime, hopefully there are studies that are being done. But I mean, who would pay? That's part of the problem, isn't there? Is it's just sort of like, who's going to pay for the studies? Like who's incentivized to find out whether the ingredients that Juul puts into their vaporizer to make it smoother, or whatever other chemicals I imagine are in that mix,
right?
Or just the idea of like, what are the impact of that much nicotine on, I imagine there's some neurological, I mean, it's not just a question of addiction. I would imagine at one point, like it's going to have neurological implications, because you're talking about kids in particular. There's nobody Like, is there anybody incentivized to actually do that study? I mean, does anybody just, maybe at a university somebody says,
yeah,
like,
precisely.
this is a project?
Fortunately, the federal government gives lots of grants for just like they do for, say, breast cancer research. There is a lot of federal money out there for people to study things like this, and we already have a very robust public health network, a community of people, many of whom give their time serving in litigation to testify about what they've learned over the years, that was dedicated to smoking, nicotine addiction specifically, and those same folks are studying e-cigarettes now because it is the epidemic that smoking was 100 years ago.
And we should say, I mean, that is just another example of these companies privatizing their profits, externalizing, socializing the cost.
Precisely.
And, that you wouldn't have to do with a lot of other products. Like, I mean, we can tell, like, I know this pen is not, we don't need any studies. They can sell these pens, and society does not have to go out and pick up the cost of making sure that it's not going to, kill me in 20 years or horribly, addict me or whatever, get me addicted or whatever it is. So, yeah, that's...
Well, and it's, we're fortunate that we have...
you would think after the tobacco thing, right? Like, that there would be a statute that just simply says, like, we're going to have a different class of... We have a different class of substances, and we're going to require proof that this is healthy. Or is not,
or not as bad as the alternative.
Right.
And I predict we will see FDA taking action, perhaps by this time next year, one would hope. And I predict we will see something like you can't have 5% nicotine, which Juul has, and except by prescription. You can't sell creme brulee. If this really is a device that helps people quit smoking, perhaps it does have a role to play. But you can't go after kids.
Right. And I've noticed, I think in New York, I don't know if it's the city or the state off the top of my head, but I've heard ads. There is a push to basically outlaw flavored vaporizers.
Right. Several states. Michigan has had a ban. Massachusetts, San Francisco, and I think we'll see more of that. It's one reason the federal government needs to get a handle on it, because this has split the public health community in a sense. I mean, there are experts I've put on at trial who don't want to serve as experts against Juul, because even though they recognize how inappropriate the marketing was, they do believe there is a role for e-cigarettes in helping people get off of combustion cigarettes. It may be 20 years before we know whether they are worse in some ways than cigarettes, but logically, when you look at what's in the smoke aerosol from a combustion cigarette versus an e-cigarette, it would seem that they must be safer.
Right.
So a lot of the public health community feels they have a role. They don't want to see outright bans. What happens when a generation of kids who are now hopelessly nicotine addicted are told you don't get e-cigarettes? Where do they go then for the nicotine? So it's a complex question. But at the end of the day, what we want, aside from compensation for people who've been harmed financially and physically, is a sort of prospective relief, kind of like the opioid case. You guys broke this. You need to, instead of externalizing the cost to all the people listening to this, to you and to me, take some of the profit that you've reaped from this and do some good and try and help these kids get off of nicotine.
Lastly, Matt, let me ask you this, like, because this question that comes up almost certainly every time I'm here. Have you ever like had the opportunity to explore what the people working at this company who know that they're putting out this product that has this enormous amount of nicotine, they're flavoring it as creme brulee or strawberry patch or whatever it is. They know they're marketing it to kids, right? I mean, you'd have to be a complete idiot to not know that, and there has to be somebody in that company who's not a complete idiot. Like, what do they just don't care? Like, I just don't understand, like, how someone goes to work every day with this knowledge and then they just head home, or is it just a function of like the quality of the car that they're driving?
It's an interesting question. I've seen two types in the cigarette industry, both through reviewing tens of thousands of documents and through taking tons of depositions of vice presidents at Philip Morris and R.J. Reynolds and Laura Lard and Liggett and crossing them at trial. Type number one, and I suspect we will see and will prove the founders of Juul are of this type, which are, I want, my Maserati, I want my castle on the hill, and if somebody has to get hurt, then so be it. And those are the worst of the barons that we've seen throughout,
Right.
our history. And then I think there are a lot of people who can't live in a constant state of cognitive dissonance, so they rationalize what they do. Well, look, these things really are safer than cigarettes, and sure, some kids may have gotten addicted, and that's unfortunate, but look at all the good we're doing. At the end of the day, the ledger really falls on my side. I'm a good guy, I'm a good woman. The average person can't live a life of just acknowledging they are pure evil. I've met some people who really have no problem with that, and it's frightening.
Wow. Matt Schultz, 11 Papantonio, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks,
today. I really
Sam.
appreciate it. Wowza. That story, not specifically the Juul story, but that story of the sociopaths in these organizations that I still, it's just, I just have trouble wrapping my head around that. Wes, we got one more guest, and you stick around. We're going to be talking about obviously the latest in terms of the impeachment and whatnot in a moment. I am joined now by Wes Bowden. Wes, you're an attorney at 11 Papantonio, right?
Yes, that's right.
And you're working on a case that came out of the C8 case. Is that right?
Yeah, it's kind of the genesis of it was C8, as some of your viewers may know, was a contaminant that was found throughout the Mid-Ohio Valley, and it was a chemical that was used in making Teflon, and it was just excreted into the water through the smokestacks, and it really poisoned about 70,000 people. We started looking at that litigation. We realized that,
and we should say that this was DuPont, right?
Yeah, it was DuPont. That's right.
And the chemical C8 was made by 3M for a while, and then 3M realized, like, this is just so toxic, we don't want to be in this business.
Yeah.
Because you got to burn this stuff off, and it has no half-life. Well, I mean, but it's an extremely long half-life.
Yeah.
And so DuPont said, well, we'll just manufacture our own, and instead of burning it, they just dumped it into river because, easier, I guess. And who's going to notice until, I guess, about 25 years ago, a farmer, his cows were dying, and that started the whole thing rolling.
That's right.
So over the course of that litigation, which at least, I guess ended in a massive did they end up settling after the first couple of cases?
So we tried 3 of them. During the 4th case, they settled, and they ended up paying that community that they poisoned. So about 3,500 cases settled for a very large sum.
Right. Okay. And so out of that case, you came across this new chemical? What?
Right. So in the course of discovery and looking at the information in that case, we realized there is a kind of a sister chemical, if you will, called PFOS. Very structurally similar, still an 8-carbon chain. And what's unique about these chemicals is they have fluorine bonds instead of hydrogen. And that's important chemistry-wise because those bonds are really hard to break. And as you were saying, they just never break down naturally in the environment. So when we saw that, we realized that these chemicals were showing up everywhere in the country, and they're showing up at specific sites, predominantly around Department of Defense, Navy, Air Force bases, where they're using firefighting foams.
So now, how did you find? And we should say that all of us in this room probably have some C8 in our system at this point.
We do, yeah.
Right? I mean, which is nuts. It is, and that's because it travels. It just keeps traveling because it never breaks down.
Right.
It's never sort of absorbed in a way. It just lingers everywhere. So we all have it in our systems at this point. It's just a question of what levels it becomes toxic. So how do you find out when you see this other chemical that exists that has a similar structure, so you know that at the very least it's one that lingers around and that's not good for human beings. How do you know that it was located in these different areas?
So that's a great question. So it's fascinating, the story of this. Only a couple years ago did our government start looking into this. And so what happened was in 2016, the EPA came out with a guideline, not a standard, but just a guideline, saying that this chemical in amounts in excess of 70 parts per trillion, which is about a drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. That small amount of chemical can cause health effects, adverse health effects. So the EPA said, we're going to come up with a guideline right now, and they're working on coming up with a standard which hopefully would be much lower. But if you exceed this guideline, it's time to start taking actions. So when the Department of Defense realized this, they said, oh my gosh, we've been using this chemical at every Air Force base, at every Navy base, at every firefighting training facility, and they started doing tests. And so what they did was they made a list, literally made a list saying, where do we think we're going to find this? Started going through the list, and they found it everywhere. Not at 70 parts per trillion, but at 9,000 parts per trillion, 10,000 parts per trillion. So they started testing people's water around these military sites. And what they've done, to their credit, although it's been delayed and it's been slow in getting there, they've started giving these communities their own bottled water. As we're talking today, there are communities throughout our country where the U.S. Navy is delivering on a weekly basis bottled water because they don't believe their water is safe to drink. And those are only the places that they've tested. So we've tested, I say we, as a country, we've only tested 3% of the water supply, just 3%. And out of that 3%, we estimate that more than 6 million people are exposed to this chemical. And so it's a big problem. It's just the tip of the iceberg.
So who made this chemical?
Historically, 3M made it. So they developed it back in the 1950s, and they started promoting it in products in the 1960s and 1970s. In around 1999-2000, 3M started getting pressure, largely because of the tenant lawsuit. They realized that this was going to be, the veil was being pulled back, and they were going to be exposed.
Largely because of the C8 case.
Yes, exactly.
They started getting wind that, like, oh boy.
Right, so they pulled out, and DuPont said, we don't care, full steam ahead for us. So then DuPont started making some of these chemicals, and there's a large group of chemicals that have these properties. But
what's wrong with the people at DuPont? Like, they just see like, oh, this stuff is too dangerous for you to make?
Boom. I think
that's our business plan.
I think that hits the nail on the head right there. That's their business plan.
I was being facetious.
It's someone in that company sat down and looked at what is it going to cost us to resolve our litigation versus what is it going to cost us to change our behavior. This has already come out in trial. I used it in one of my trials. Right. They realized in the mid-1980s that they could incinerate this chemical instead of just dumping it into the river, instead of just dumping it into the smokestack. You know what their number was? They did an accounting, 15 cents per pound, $1 million a year on a company that was grossing just in this one department alone $100 million in net profit. It was over $1 billion gross revenue. So for 15 cents, they're willing to poison people.
And they just assumed like either we'll get away with it,
right,
or if we have to pay damages, it'll be less than 15 cents per pound, essentially.
Yeah.
Or I'm CEO right now, and I probably won't be here in 15 years.
That's a large part of it, too. So when we look at these litigations that occur over and over again, we think to ourselves, how can these companies continue on this course of conduct? Ask yourself, how many of these executives are going to jail? You just never see those headlines.
Right.
Wall Street doesn't care. The stock might dip briefly, but it always rebounds. These executives, they say, oh, well, that was in the past. We've changed our conduct. It's because there's a delay. They're just very good at the cover-up. It took us 40 years to figure out what was wrong with this community. And now, they've paid a settlement. The settlement was $670 million. During that time period, they made billions in profit, billions for their shareholders. So, until there's a way that we can actually hold people in executive positions accountable and, actually change legislatively and hold them criminally accountable, even the company, I don't know that we're going to be able to really change the course of conduct of these companies.
Okay, I didn't mean to sidetrack the story, but yeah, I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, I feel like the work that the attorneys do here change specific conduct. and in some instances has a more lasting impact, but it's almost like a little bit of a whack-a-mole type of situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so this chemical, DuPont sees that, 3M's too afraid of this. That's where we make our money, because our business model is that we do, the stuff that non-sociopaths won't do because there's a market in it, and so they start making the chemical, and then they must know at that point, right? Because 3M is obviously, it's profitable for 3M at least to some extent, right?
Right.
And so they must know that there's a problem, like almost inherently. Is that almost like prima facie evidence that they...
We had a document written in 1982 from their in-house counsel saying we have been liable for the past 32 years of operation. And this is their attorney saying what you're doing is wrong. Internally, their head medical director said this is a known animal carcinogen, and we believe that it is a probable human carcinogen. So this isn't science waiting to develop today. This is a company saying we know this, but we're not going to tell regulators, and we'll deal with it when someone files suit. There's literally a document that we used in one of our trials where their head epidemiologist, a person who's in charge of looking at health effects in large populations, said we have a cancer problem, a human cancer problem at our work site. Do we want to do the study? And the note at the bottom of the memo is, I quote this, wait to do the study until we are sued. That's the mentality this company takes when it comes to people.
So now, my understanding is DuPont is out of business, or
as a shell game.
Right.
So,
okay. So tell me that shell game.
So what happened was in the 2010s, DuPont spun off its fluoropolymers department into Chemours. And they loaded up Chemours with debt. They made Chemours pay them a bunch of money as a dividend. And they were basically just trying to set this company up, in my opinion, to fail. And they had an agreement in place to make it to where Chemours was going to pay all of these claims, a way to further limit their liability.
So they create an arm's length entity that is basically just kicking money back to them, but owns all the liability for the product. And so it's like, well, it's not us, it's this Chemours guys over here, and so they don't have many assets. So you're in trouble because they're just a PO box.
Right. So they loaded them up with probably $400 million in assets and an equal amount of debt. And what's really interesting right now, once they spin it off, Chemours is now its own legal entity under the law. Well, what has Chemours done? They turned around and sued DuPont, saying this was a fraudulent transfer. That case is now pending in Delaware, and it's not a sealed...
Oh, so the executives at Chemours are like, what do we do with this?
Yeah.
And
they're saying what DuPont did was wrong, and it shouldn't be our responsibility to fix their mistake. And so that's playing out in the courts right now.
Interesting. And so do you have cases, or are these cases waiting for the resolution of the relationship between these two companies?
No, we have cases that are ongoing. We have personal injury cases from the community that was affected directly by DuPont's Teflon manufacturing plant. And then we also have now cases that are being brought on behalf of states, governments and cities that have their own natural resource damages claims, saying this chemical shouldn't be here.
And we're talking about the PF...
the AFFF litigation,
okay.
Yeah. So there's PFAS generally. There's a lot of different terms that are easy to confuse, but all the same class of chemicals. Same two companies at play, the same two major manufacturers being DuPont and 3M. So they're facing a lot of liability.
And it sounds like we don't know even the half of it in terms of where this chemical is and what other communities are impacted by it.
That's right. Not even half. we know 3% so far. That's all the testing that's been done. There are additional government funds being set aside to do testing. The EPA actually encourages, it's called an unregulated contaminant. Still unregulated, despite all we know now, it's still unregulated because the EPA hasn't set a standard. But now many water supplies are starting to look for this chemical, and it's coming out on a weekly basis. California just 2 weeks ago lowered their level that's allowed in their water and found an additional 300 communities that have been affected.
Oh, jeez.
And these are the states that are taking action now. Michigan is a little bit ahead of the curve because they've started doing testing. California as well. But you're going to find it all throughout the country. So far, they've identified about 600 sites, and they're looking for more.
And is this chemical just used exclusively in terms of like fighting fire?
No, it's not. It's in fact, you and I have it in our blood right now through just regular consumer items. stain-resistant carpets. If you've ever eaten a fast food chain, the hamburger wrappers, the soda cups are lined with these chemicals to help keep water from clinging to them. And so the odd thing, the really scary thing is that you and I, as we sit here having this conversation, we have about 2,000 parts per trillion in our blood. So if our blood was water, it would not be safe for us to drink it. I mean, that's how bad this chemical is. It's in every living organism in our country.
And there's no way to expel it, is there?
No, you have to just wait. The half-life of these chemicals is just 2,000 today.
I'm talking like there's no way of expelling it in a mortal human.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, you have to just wait it out. So our bodies will get rid of it in about 5 years. Half of it will be out of our body. So 5 years from now, if we're having the same conversation, we'll have 1,000 in us.
But that's presuming I'm not going out eating hamburger or wherever. I mean, is there a website where I can go and see like the different products that have this? Like, I mean, I don't have a stain-resistant carpet.
Right.
And part of it is because I was like, I'm not sure I know how they do that, and I don't know if I want to know. Right? Like,
so there are the EPA website for PFAS chemicals, PFAS. They list a lot of the consumer products that historically had it.
PFAS.
Right. So that's the kind of the global family of chemicals. But as of 2016, our country has phased them out from manufacturing processes. But that's very recent. Okay. So you think about the persistence of these chemicals and how we're exposed to them. We're still going to be exposed to them for the foreseeable future.
Okay. So, and maybe we'll put a link to that EPA site back in Brooklyn. They'll put that on the. It's PFAS. And all right. Well, I guess next time I'm here, you'll probably have an update on the progress of these cases. Wes, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Take
care. Wow. Eesh. It's great, thank you. I think we're going to probably do a freebie Friday. What do you guys think? Is anybody there?
Freebie Thursday. Sorry, freebie Thursday.
I can't hear you guys.
A freebie.
What's that?
A freebie Thursday.
Oh, wait. Yeah, today's Thursday. Oh, screw that. I didn't know. I forgot. All right. Well, then let's head to the fun half. We got a lot of stuff to cover today in terms of impeachment. I mean, yes, the past couple of days have been stunning, frankly, in terms of what we're going to see on impeachment. I just want to say, and I don't know, maybe I should reach out to Tim Pool and have have another debate and see if he's changed his mind about this. But
hey, actually,
I thought he agreed with you on everything.
I wanted to test something out.
No, well, he said he wasn't. He thought like it couldn't be extortion. Some people call it bribery. I think it's extortion, frankly. Regardless, bribery, extortion, more or less a similar dynamic. Bribery, incidentally, if you look in the Constitution, that's almost it's explicitly impeachable. But one of the things that he had said was the Ukrainians didn't know that Trump was leveraging this money. And my argument was that doesn't matter any more than it would matter if I knew that you were attempting to kill me. You can't. That's not a defense. I was trying to poison my husband, but he didn't know I was doing it. So it's not. It's not attempted murder.
That was happening.
No, I became aware of it. I was
going to say.
It took a while.
I want to test.
You got to be careful of sweet stuff because that's coolant. But the other thing, let me just finish the part.
Yeah, sorry.
So that story has fallen apart. The Ukrainians apparently did know that the funds were being withheld. But like I say, that's largely irrelevant. It's just a talking point that they can no longer address. And the idea that Donald Trump was genuinely concerned with the corruption of Ukraine.
I hate corruption.
I hate it.
It's
so
laughable
bad.
on its face.
So
but
bad.
There are people who don't have that reaction. And I want to respect. I want to show my respect for people who have a different idea of things than I do. So fine, you don't find it laughable on its face that Donald Trump would be against corruption, specifically in Ukraine. But it also turns out that the Trump administration has been looking to cut anti-corruption funds for Ukraine and around the world.
Yeah, until they get rid of the corruption.
Yeah, exactly.
from day one of this administration. That story came out yesterday. And so now what we're witnessing is is Plan B by the Republicans. And we will talk about Plan B. And I've had this argument with the first guest what we had on today and a number of other lawyers. I am of the mind that there's a Plan C, and I will present my theory about that in the fun half. Before we do,
wait, just for Tim Pool, are we going in the obvious direction, which would be like, I don't want to be a dick, but you're like Thanos? Or, that's a utilitarian perspective, and that's usually the bad guy in movies, Sam.
Yeah, it's Bill.
I think it's Bill, right?
Yeah, Bill would be a total Tim Pool.
With the
Bring your
chuckles.
bus, Bill.
I hate to bring it up, but you're sounding like Thanos.
Well, Tim Pool made a strong case against impeachment. How it's actually going to hurt the Democrats.
Yeah, T, that's actually going to reverberate about on Democrats, but unless you listen to what Tulsi's saying about my wife.
But that's where he starts out. But by the end of it really, depending on what the clicks, what his monetization rate is, it could easily go into Mandela territory.
Right. Absolutely.
Let's just put it that way.
As of now, it should be like, I thought he had good points. I thought I had good points. We both said things.
Both said things, both right about some things.
Both right about some things. Both, maybe he fact-checked me. Maybe I reminded him of the Avengers.
Incidentally, I have had the opportunity to be in contact with people who, and you always have are they ignorant or is it a grift type of debate with people? And it's on the grift side. Yeah. I mean, but it also, there's something beautiful about it that I've come to understand. We'll talk more about it in the fun half, but
maybe off mic.
Huh?
Maybe off mic.
Yeah. Well, or maybe not. Folks, knowing your dog's breed mix can help you provide a better quality of life. Like I said, Kelly's doing it with Edie. The listeners are doing it with Gregor. And the Embark Dog DNA test is the best-in-class dog DNA test. Developed by doctors and veterinarians, Embark tests for over 250 breeds and 170 genetic health conditions so that you can make sure that you're feeding your dog what's going to keep them healthy. You're watching out for specific diseases they might be predisposed to. It's the only research-grade dog DNA test kit on the market. Save 15% on a dog DNA test. Go to embarkvet.com, EMBARKVET, embarkvet.com. Use the promo code MAJORITY. Just a reminder, this show relies on your support. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you get the fun half, you get the first half commercial free, and you just get the ability to go and walk around and just say, like, I'm a member of the Majority Report. And if you say that long enough, in as many places as you can, you will run into another member or listener of the show. For some reason, I've been out here, I've gotten recognized by a ton of people. And that doesn't generally happen to me. I don't know what that is.
It happens at tort conferences and Bernie rallies.
Well, when I got here yesterday, you know how I was having a problem with the internet?
Mm-hmm.
And the drop wasn't here. The Ethernet drop was not here. And I'm trying to maintain. I think everybody there knows that sometimes I get a little bit.
What a self-astute, self-aware use of language right here. I like that. Thank you.
Right? No, I mean, it's no secret that I get, in circumstances where there have been failures of others that will implicate the quality or the ability to do the show, that I get a little hot under the collar about it.
A little bit.
And so we're waiting for the representative of the place to come down, and he comes down, and he looks like a deer in the headlight, and I actually I had like a sense of calm over me because of it in some way. I couldn't tell what it was, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, we need the internet, and so he comes back later and he goes, listen, I'm really sorry about this. We're going to get it done. I promise you. I'm actually, the reason why I was a little bit off put when you can't is I'm a big fan of the show, and I was planning to watch this later today.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, yeah, don't worry about it. He was a very nice guy, and true to form, by 11:59 East Coast time, literally at 11:59 East Coast time, we had that internet drop, and so we were able to do the show. So become a member.
Fantastic.
Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget, get the Majority app. And you can now listen to AM Quickie on there. You can go to amquickie.com to sign up if you want to subscribe to get it. It's free, totally free. This is a free service. 5 minutes a day every morning. Give you the headline news. Lucy's been holding down the fort this week because I can't do it at 4:30 in the morning here. So check that out. And also, don't forget, if there's stuff that you don't understand that we talk about on the show that are clearly supposed to be funny or is like an inside joke, I'm not saying they're necessarily funny, but they're inside joke, send us an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com with the subject line memes. You don't email us to ask. We got a bunch. I must have misphrased this the other day because we got a bunch of emails saying like, oh yeah, no, send me the document with all this stuff on it. And I'm like, no, we don't. We're building a document that we're going to put on the website, but we need your input as to what you don't get because we don't know what you don't get. Michael, what happened last Tuesday in the office?
Well, let me just say I talked about, we covered Chile, Lebanon, had on Artesia and John Idarola. I want to just also say David Feldman called in, and he just, the frame of the interview is that he's an elder statesman of the Bernie Bro movement, and he just ambushed me with his sort of liberal wankery, even though he kept telling me he was an old lefty from way back. That was a very funny exchange. If people like Feldman's humor, which I do a lot.
He thought Bernie was too much of a junior senator. He said, I'm just not sure the country's ready for an obnoxious, loudmouth junior senator from Vermont. And then he, and I'll also just say, I mean, next Tuesday, Shama Sawant's going to be on among several other guests, and I just kind of want to plug that if people can help her elections in the next couple of weeks, and Amazon's putting about $1 million into city council races to try to reverse the tide in Seattle. And for patrons, there's 2 brand new interviews, one with Adolph Reed, which is available now. We'll run it later. And another one we'll put up for patrons first as well with Zizek, both of which, were really fun and I think especially really important.
Jamie?
Jamie's not here today, but check out the Antifada.
Okay.
And Literary Hangover, I'm going to be doing, me and Alex returns for Salem Witch Trials. We're going to get deep into the politics of that, so look forward to that.
All right, folks, quick break, fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them.
Almost has what? Almost says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on! Come on! Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
All right, we're back. It's the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. I am attempting to set up ability for me to take calls here, and it involves my old iPhone and a third Skype account to use with the cables that I've established. Yeah, no, it's like
Hello.
Okay. And then of course, like Skype now is just like it's as if I am trying to break into Fort Knox.
Yes.
In terms of the like various levels of 14-factor authentication, so that I can use my one of the Skype accounts. It's absurd. It's absurd what's happening in this country. It's crazy.
Hello, this is Mitt Romney.
All right, let's see here.
Is you even hearing these drops? These are incredible.
No, of course I heard it. I heard, hello,
I mean,
this is Mitt Romney. I heard that. Now,
who was the first one? Yeah, Prager. Come on.
All right, now I'm going to try and see if I can do this here. Hold on.
Good morning, Patriots. Good morning, Patriots. Good morning, Rebels.
I love it.
Okay, let's see if this works. I'm getting some feedback on that.
Not trying to be a dick or anything, but you know that you sound like the bad guy in the event.
Oh, that's a little.
Sam is not taking calls yet. Please leave a message for Sam.
Oh, all right, so I'm gonna be able to. I'm gonna be able to do this.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Nice
I
job.
just set that up.
MacGyver.
That's what risking a new imagination for a future is all about.
You just Bill Burton the phone systems, man.
Yeah, I did. I will. I'm going to endeavor to take phone. Oh, now I can't log in. Son of a gun. Now my fans thing is not coming up. Oh shit. Will you just manage? Will you manage the just Michael, get on the phone thing and turn off the voicemail.
Okay. That's going to take... All right. Definitely make sure.
Oh, my gosh. I'm sitting here doing all this MacGyver stuff. We gotta how to log on to the
pull the computer back.
Yeah, we got a monitor situation.
Oh, you get what?
That monitor's swiveled to face us so we can see you.
Oh, I see. Well, Brendan can just do it on his computer. Just go into fans and go into the phones. And
he's got it.
Okay. In the meantime, while we do that,
I mean, we should definitely work to get phone calls for sure. A lot of them are very high
well,
quality.
let's give it a try. So,
I just turned
but
off
let's.
the voicemail.
You did? Okay.
Thank you for calling into the majority.
All right. So if you could put me into the pole position there, and you're going to have to basically just call out the calls.
That guy really does sound like Mitt Romney.
Do I get to choose the calls today?
Yeah, you do.
Wow.
Nice. Like a real call screener who doesn't do any screening. Just sort of like whatever.
Well,
I like the look of that
be,
area code.
I don't know what any of these numbers are. Like, I don't get to see them every day. So.
It's like announcing bingo.
But before we get there, let's start with what took place yesterday. Did you find that Mitch McConnell stuff?
There wasn't anything on Fox, but we did find him at the press conference on Tuesday making similar comments.
Okay. So here's the deal in terms of, excuse me, in terms of impeachment. There's no way the House is not going to impeach Donald Trump at this point. It is impossible to imagine. And the Republicans know it. They know that Donald Trump has been caught dead to rights. The only questions at this point, the only material questions are, how many articles of impeachment will he be charged with? From what's going on with the Ukraine situation, in and of itself, there's probably a couple of articles of impeachment there. Abuse of power, arguably emoluments, arguably, election law, and bribery. And then you could also throw in obstruction insofar as you've had multiple members of the executive branch not come in and testify, refuse to, attempts to prevent other witnesses from testifying. And then the question also becomes, do they start looking into emoluments? There's plenty of examples where he has broken the emoluments clause or contravened it. Then do you also look into obstruction that has taken place over the course of not just the Mueller investigation, but in other oversight functions of the House? And then the only other question that remains after that is like, when are they going to do this? Right now they're talking about going public with the witnesses in November. But we shall see. The only response we have seen from Republicans is not to refute Bill Taylor, not to refute the Pentagon witness yesterday as to the implications of withholding that aid and how it was done. It is to complain about the process in an incredibly disingenuous way, in a way that is perfect for Fox News. Here is a mob of well-suited Republican congressmen, 13 of whom have the absolute right to go into that room without doing these theatrics. 13 of them are on committees that allow them to be in the skiff. This is the room in Congress where they have hearings if they want it to be completely secure, and they do it in these rooms. You're not supposed to bring recording devices in. Of course, these Republicans did. You're not supposed to go in there. Darrell Issa was actually not frog marched, but he was escorted out of that room during the Benghazi hearings because he wasn't part of them. He wanted to be, but he wasn't. And I'm telling you, it was a Republican, Trey Gowdy, had him taken out because he wasn't a member of the committee.
Tulsa's friend.
Nothing that the Democrats have done at this point, to this point, is in any way out of the norm for the way you would handle any investigation. Benghazi was handled this way, others. This is the way you do it. But they need to try and delegitimize this whole process now because they know on the facts Trump is toast. Here's that clip.
With Steve King.
Steve King, of course.
I want to get involved in that.
Is that Jody Ernst?
So there you have it. And here's Matt Gaetz, who was the ringleader of this. You know, he went on and made these complaints like a week or two ago, and he got enough press attention that he figured, oh, this is working. Now, but understand what the strategy is here. This is for consumption by Fox News and by right-wing media, so that, and remember, we live in a world now where it used to be where the right-wing media would try and get their narrative into the mainstream bloodstream of the news. Now they don't do that. They don't have to, because we have two parallel narratives, and they just need something to talk about, and this is what they're talking about. I didn't watch any Fox News last night. I can guarantee you, you barely heard the words Bill Taylor, but you heard all about Matt Gaetz.
I'm gathered here with dozens of my congressional colleagues underground in the basement of the Capitol, because if behind those doors they intend to overturn the results of an American presidential election, we want to know what's going on.
Jesus Christ.
Now, as you can tell, he's in a cave, in a dark dungeon. This just happens to be the lower floor of the, there's probably one or two floors lower than that. But he's talking about it as being a coup, as opposed to an impeachment. The words impeachment show up in the Constitution. And I think to a certain extent, what they're trying to do, did you see that Major League Baseball umpire who had to, who deleted his tweet? I'm buying an AR-15 if you're going to try and get rid of my president.
Yep.
MAGA, whatever it is, Civil War.
Did you see that Matt Gaetz broke laws by giving out faulty passes down to this lower level for HBO cameramen for a show he's filming?
Oh, he's doing this
he gave
the,
them
Axios show?
expired. They gave him expired passes.
Yeah.
Of course. And let's make sure that that Mike Allen can get down here with us, guys. We're fighting for democracy.
This is a big deal.
So embarrassing.
All right, so here's where this is going, I think, at this point. The Democrats are just going to figure out the details of how they're going to impeach Donald Trump. The timing, how many different articles there's going to be. I mean, they're planning on taking a vote before the Christmas holidays. I wouldn't count on it, because they're gonna roll out public testimony in November, and I think they're going to begin to realize that it is educating the American public. We've now hit 55% on the latest poll on impeachment, and it's going to get larger. And understand what the name of the game here is: pressure on 5 senators, Republican senators. Susan Collins, Cory Gardner, McAdams in Arizona. Is that her name? I say
McSally.
What is it? Yeah, Sally McAdams. Joni Ernst. And I think to a certain extent Tom Tillis, although he supposedly said the other day, like, impeachment's completely out of the question.
I have to say,
and the question
also
is,
on the one in Arizona, you're going to have to strategize very closely with, oh my God, I'm entirely forgetting her name. Who's the other senator from Arizona?
Kristen Sinema.
Because I would say if there's any Democrats that could flip in the other direction, she'd be right up there with Manchin. That's like, I think, a state wrinkle right there.
It's possible. I think it's just highly doubtful at this point. But Manchin is certainly one to watch.
Oh, so Manchin, I don't think he will not vote for it. I would be very confident of that. But Sinema, I would watch.
I don't know, but those two are far less reluctant to because they're not up for re-election. Those two are far less reluctant to vote for impeachment, or to make that vote, than those other 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is it automatic? Should we assume that if impeachment passes in the House, if the articles of impeachment are sent to the Senate, should we assume that it's automatic that they're going to be taken up by Mitch McConnell and there's actually going to be a vote? Here's Mitch McConnell from a press conference. I haven't seen this clip, but I heard him on Fox saying something that I think is similar, but let's listen to what he says here.
There have been a number of Republicans who have said that if an impeachment trial happens in the Senate, you could quickly bring up a vote to dismiss any kind of impeachment charges. Would you think about doing that, or would you let the trial go all the way through into a vote on conviction?
Well, it won't be up to me. Unlike other procedures in the Senate, the majority leader does not really have ball control here. When it comes over from the House, we have to take it up, as I think you've learned. Without consent, we're on it 6 days a week. The rule even says when we turn to it. And the Chief Justice is in the chair and rules on all the motions. They can be overturned by a vote, but I don't see anybody in all of this, myself or others, who would be able to control the process. At some point, it ends. With the Clinton impeachment, it went on for 2 months. I have no idea how long this will go on. What I can tell you for sure is if the House impeaches, we will be on it. It will displace everything else, and we'll be on it until we finish.
What a quick dismissal.
There are all kinds of potentials, and we don't have it yet. When we do, we'll have to come to grips with how long we're going to stay on it. In the Clinton impeachment proceeding, Senator Lott and Senator Daschle did agree to a process that kind of laid out how it would be handled. If this were to come over from the House, I'm sure Senator Schumer and I would sit down and discuss coming to an agreement on a process. That was voted on, and in the Clinton impeachment, it was passed 100-0. So there was broad agreement on how to handle it. But the
Sam?
Yeah. There's a lot of wiggle room in there. I'm not in control of it. There was negotiations last time. It's all, and now he's saying the other night on Fox News, he's saying Senate rules. Now, nowhere in what he said there, nowhere in what he said on Fox News was the Constitution. Right? I mean, this is a constitutionally mandated, it's the easiest answer. Constitution says Senate takes it up. We'll take it up. How it goes, I don't know. But he's not bringing that up, which leads me to believe that he is trying to at least build a predicate that this is out of his hands. It's a function of Senate rules. The only thing is that Senate rules can be voted on and changed. And he's got 5 members of his caucus that he does not want to take that vote. Now, he's also covering his ass on the other side by saying, like, I'm not, I can't, there's nothing I can do. Because they are in an incredibly difficult situation. Because you have 35% of the country that will never, ever, there is no amount of evidence, and we've been saying this since day one, will justify impeachment of Donald Trump in their eyes. Short of him, the video of him running naked across the lawn chasing the lawnmower kid.
The lawnmower kid.
Haven't you seen that meme with Donald Trump? The kid's on the White House with the lawnmower.
I'm sure. If that happened, maybe it would go from 35 to 25%.
It might. I think there's going to be always 30% who are going to be 30%. On that.
Okay, I was being generous. Yeah, 30%. Sure. I mean, what was the lowest that George W. Bush went, right? That was
32%.
Yeah, and that's like Iraq, Katrina. I mean, you get to a point where it's like, all right, George W. Bush could personally go to those people's homes and punch them in the face.
I'm going to, we're having a little bit of problem finding out what my number is when we're calling into Skype. Let's just bear with me, folks. I mean, into the, oh gosh.
Could Brendan
I don't know
text
what,
you?
Yeah, he did. I just don't know what the number is.
Oh.
It is a.
Just look at these pictures.
All right, it's not going to work. We're not going to just do that. Folks, we can't take calls. I'm
we can
sorry.
try one call if we want.
Yeah, but the thing is, you don't know what my number is.
Maybe you're already in. I don't know.
No, I just hung up. I'll call him right now.
Calling right now should work. When did these pictures take place?
The lawnmower pictures?
Yeah.
Looks
I completely missed.
All right, I'm calling in right now, Brendan. So I just connected. So I'm probably going to show up in a sec.
Jesus Christ.
Here is Donald Trump in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is back on the rough up the protesters, but wink, wink, don't rough up the protesters kick. And we're going to see a lot more of this. I mean, this is, people should prepare themselves. Here he is.
Yeah, don't hurt them. Don't hurt them, please. They don't know they're dealing with very tough people in this room. They don't know who they're dealing with. They don't know who they're dealing with. They just don't understand. All right, go home to mom. Explain to mom that you tried to take on very powerful people, and many of them physically as well as mentally. That's not a good thing to do. Not in this room. Be careful. Make sure you don't hurt them. Please. Thank you.
That's incredible because there's the incitement aspect, but then it's also just, you know, I hope people will get the reference, but please watch the Tanya Harding movie. And there's the guy who sets the whole scheme to attack Nancy Kerrigan in motion in the Tanya Harding movie, and that's like the Trump base. So the fact that he keeps flattering them as being powerful, it's also like this perfect psychic symbiosis. It's amazing.
Well, and then we have footage, right, Brendan, if I'm not mistaken, this is footage of the protesters that were being thrown out.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Who he is, he's suggesting, you know, you're going to be intimidated. You're dealing with powerful people. These are 8 Jews who were responding to the Tree of Life shooting that took place in Pittsburgh at a Jewish synagogue. And happened a year ago. And here they are. So these are the people that Trump was basically saying, careful, you're going to get beat up here.
Jews! Trump endangers 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 Jews! Get him out! Trump get him out! Trump endangers Jews! Get him out!
There you have it.
Yep.
Be careful. Go home to mama.
It's amazing the impulse of the people that are there for Trump to hold like jobs and energy growth, poster over those people's faces to try to block their protests.
Like, we tapped Anwar, you Jew.
There it is. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean,
Donald Trump in
You
Pittsburgh.
don't know who you're dealing with, or maybe you
don't
know
know.
exactly who
Maybe
you're
you know
dealing with.
exactly who you're dealing with. Watch Tanya. Watch that guy in the basement talking about being a secret CIA agent.
So Mark Zuckerberg was up in front of the House Financial Services Committee yesterday, and it's amazing. There are some. One of the things that has to be resolved about impeachment is how are they going to let what members of these committees are going to be able to ask questions, right? There's 100 members of committees that are literally working on different impeachment questions. The idea of them all getting 5 minutes is useless. The Democrats should smarten up. Certain individuals should swallow their egos and allow those members of Congress who know how to do this, do it. And then also have counsel, have lawyers, their lawyers, staff lawyers do it. There are a couple of amazing examples of people questioning Mark Zuckerberg. And some of whom were trained as prosecutors, others who are just very smart, apparently, relative to their colleagues. And they should just suck it up and appreciate that, all right, we're fortunate enough to have someone who can really do this. Here is AOC questioning Zuckerberg. Zuckerberg has already made it clear that the policy is going to be that we're not going to fact check politicians' ads. But this is just a stunning policy, and here is how AOC basically explains that to Mark Zuckerberg, and he's left basically a blubbering mess.
Announced recently that the official policy of Facebook now allows politicians to pay to spread disinformation in 2020 elections and in the future. So I just want to know how far I can push this in the next year. Under your policy, using census data as well, could I pay to target predominantly black zip codes and advertise them the incorrect election date?
No, Congresswoman, you couldn't. We have, even for these policies around the newsworthiness of content that politicians say, and the general principle that I believe that.
But you said you're not going to fact check my ads.
We have, if anyone, including a politician, is saying things that can cause, that is calling for violence or could risk imminent physical harm or voter or census suppression when we roll out the census suppression policy.
Pause it for 1 second. He made that up, right? Like, he made that up. There's no census and voting policy. He just made that up in that moment because they hadn't even contemplated a lie like that. That's how ridiculous this multi-billion-dollar company is. When they roll out these policies, the amount of thought that actually goes into it, or the intellectual midgets who are making these policies. He made that up. They didn't have a census election policy. That's why he led with, we don't allow politicians to do anything that's going to harm people physically. Because he didn't have the answer, we have an election and census policy. He just realized, like, what I just said didn't address her question, so I'm going to make something up. But continue.
Also, an election and census policy is an anti-Republican policy.
Of course, but they hadn't contemplated anything like that.
Policy, we will take that content down.
So you will, there is some threshold where you will fact check political advertisements. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, Congresswoman, yes, for specific things like that, where there's imminent risk of harm.
Could I run ads targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Would I be able to run advertisements on Facebook targeting Republicans in primaries saying that they voted for the Green New Deal? I mean, if you're not fact-checking political advertisements, I'm just trying to understand the bounds here. What's fair game?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I think.
So you don't know if I'll be able to do that?
I think probably.
Do you see a potential problem here with a complete lack of fact-checking on political advertisements?
Well, Congresswoman, I think lying is bad, and I think if you were to run an ad that had a lie, that would be bad. That's different from it being, in our position, the right thing to do to prevent your constituents or people in an election from seeing that you had lied.
So you won't take down lies, or you will take down lies? I think it's just a pretty simple yes or no.
Congresswoman,
I'm not talking about spin. I'm talking about actual
yes, in most cases, in a democracy, okay. I believe that people should be able to see for themselves what politicians that they may or may not vote for
so
are
you
saying,
won't take
judge
them
their
down.
Character for themselves.
So you won't take. You may flag that it's wrong, but you won't take it down.
Congresswoman, it depends on the context that it shows up. Organic post ads, the treatment is a little
One
bit different.
more question. In your ongoing dinner parties with far-right figures, some of who advance the conspiracy theory that white supremacy is a hoax, did you discuss so-called social media bias against conservatives, and do you believe there is a bias?
Congresswoman, so I don't remember everything that was in the question.
That's all right. I'll move on. Can you explain why you've named the Daily Caller, a publication well documented with ties to white supremacists, as an official fact checker for Facebook?
Congresswoman, sure. We actually don't appoint the independent fact checkers. They go through an independent organization called the Independent Fact Checking Network that has a rigorous standard for who they allow to serve as a fact checker.
So you would say that white supremacist-tied publications meet a rigorous standard for fact-checking? Thank you.
Congresswoman, I would say that we're not the one assessing that standard. The International Fact Checking Network is the one who is setting that standard.
Ooh. Well, no, wait a second. Hold on. Did he just get the name of that thing wrong?
The International Fact Checking Organization?
Didn't he just call it the Independent Fact Checking Network?
I'm not sure.
Wait, go back. I think he actually got... This guy's this is unbelievable. This is just an unbelievable testimony. This is just... How... Is there no one at Facebook who says, like, you know what, Mark? Honestly, this is not for you, buddy. Go back. I think he got the name wrong. He's so flustered.
All right.
Congresswoman, so I don't remember everything that was in the question.
That's all right. I'll move on. Can you explain why you've named the Daily Caller, a publication well documented with ties to white supremacists, as an official fact checker for Facebook?
Congresswoman, sure. We actually don't appoint the independent fact checkers. They go through an independent organization called the Independent Fact Checking Network that has a rigorous standard for who they allow.
He called it the Independent Fact. Okay, stop. Okay, so it's either the International or the Independent Fact Checking Network. So they don't have any responsibility for it because they outsource this. And if the Independent or International Fact Checking Network hires the Daily Caller to do their fact checking, they're not responsible because they only subscribe to the Independent or International Fact Checking Network. Whichever one it is, I want to name our business that. Like, what? How is that in any way relieve Facebook of responsibility for what goes up on their site? Well, we subscribe to the Independent Fact Checking Network. I mean, it sounds like it's just I can't. That company should be broken into a million pieces.
Yeah.
A million pieces. First of all, the policy that they have worked on. He knows he's going up there. They announced the policy about politicians are going to be able to are not going to be fact checked, and he got stumped in about 30 seconds. Not even. In just literally 3 seconds, it took her to give him two instances that apparently they had never even contemplated could ever happen. And the idea that I don't even know that they're going to flag those things. But how are you supposed to know that the politician is lying if you get your news from Facebook? And
you're going to use the fact consortium?
Who's going to pay? Now, theoretically, right? These ads, they're paid content. So they're going to be on top of every other content. They're going to be prioritized because that's the way Facebook makes their money. So how are you going to get this information that she's lying, that these freshman Republicans, House members, voted for the Green New Deal, or that she's lying to the targeted African Americans, saying that the voting is the next day? How are you going to get this? How are we as consumers of politicians' rhetoric supposed to know that these politicians are lying? Because he wants to do a big service. I want the citizenry to be able to know what kind of character their politicians have. This guy's so full of crap, it's unbelievable.
This is about people power?
Yeah.
Sam, we still got like 6 or 7 more clips of this.
Yeah, I know. I'm just so
pace
obsessed
yourself.
about this
your
guy.
fire, bro.
I'm trying, honestly. Like I feel like they should have been. And Mr. Zuckerberg, behind you is a Capitol police squad. They're going to put you into a car now and take you to prison. Here is
something called the Fact Squad.
Ayanna Pressley. Now, one of the amazing things about this, and this came up, and I don't think we have the clip of this, but he was there trying to sell the idea of their cryptocurrency, which is a method of payment. And unlike, let's say, like PayPal, like he wanted to have it like he wanted to be stored too. You could store it. You could save this crypto payment. And the guy said, one of the congressmen said, "What? Oh, so you want to do it like a bank without any banking regulation?" And he goes, "Well, no, we don't want to be a bank. We don't want to be categorized as a bank."
Just as we don't want to be a
that's
media
the problem.
company,
right?
We like to define very tightly what we want to be on Facebook. And then we would like you to accept those. It's sort of like a vision board.
Well, let's go to Katie Porter. She talks about the idea that there's a real problem with the way that they're dealing with their content moderator workers. Play this.
I just want to say, I know a friend of mine's wife, I mean, I'm not sure she still does this, but she used to do exactly what Katie Porter's talking about for YouTube. And I think better treated than at Facebook. But this is a horrifying job that also shows, frankly, though, that all these companies saying they don't have time to actually like have humans monitoring content for quality and journalistic purposes is bullshit.
Facebook's known as a great place to work, free food, ping pong tables, great employee benefits, but Facebook doesn't use its employees for the hardest jobs in the company. You've got about 15,000 contractors watching murders, stabbings, suicides, other gruesome, disgusting videos for content moderation, correct?
Congressman, yes, I believe that's correct.
You pay many of those workers under $30,000 a year, and you've cut them off from mental health care when they leave the company, even if they have PTSD because of their work for your company. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, my understanding is we pay everyone, including the contractors associated with the company, at least a $15 minimum wage. In markets and in cities where there's a high cost of living, that's a $20 minimum wage. We go out of our way to offer
I take your word at the wage. Reclaiming my time. According to one report I have, and this is straight out of an episode of Black Mirror, these workers get 9 minutes of supervised wellness time per day. That means 9 minutes to cry in the stairwell while somebody watches them. Would you be willing to commit to spending 1 hour a day for the next year watching these videos and acting as a content monitor and only accessing the same benefits available to your workers?
Congresswoman, we work hard to make sure that we give good benefits to all the folks who are doing this.
Mr. Zuckerberg, reclaiming my time, I would appreciate a yes or a no. Would you be willing to act as a content monitor? To have that life experience?
I'm not sure that it would best serve our community for me to spend.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Zuckerberg,
I spend a lot of
reclaiming
time
my
looking at this
time.
content.
Mr. Zuckerberg, are you saying you're not qualified to be a content monitor?
No, Congresswoman, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, then you're saying you're not willing to do it.
Damn.
Wow.
That is incredible. And he is a monster of world-class proportions.
First off, this guy, he's a horror show. He's a horror show, and the idea that they would allow that there wouldn't be regulation on this guy for this type of stuff, this ship has sailed. He's done. His crypto is done, and if he better hope that either Donald Trump gets reelected or Joe Biden comes in there.
Pete
because
Buttigieg too, driving
Oh,
around
you
in
kidding
cards
me?
with him.
Or Pete Buttigieg,
is
yes.
the best. For him.
Buttigieg is his chauffeur.
No one's
Yep.
better than him than Buttigieg.
But the other thing is that folks like Katie Porter, Democrats need to suck it up and understand who's good at this and who's not. And Katie Porter should have more than 5 minutes.
She's the
best. There should be half a dozen Congress people on that committee who say, guess what? I cede my time to Katie Porter.
Oh my God! Could you imagine Zuckerberg's face?
I was actually hoping for an exchange with each of you individually.
I wanted an exchange of ideas with all of you.
I'm stealing a bit of Matt's usual thunder here, but just the rhetorical flourishes she was showing in there, that she went from, pinning him down to saying he wouldn't do this job to also playing into his ego that he's too smart for it right at the end is like, amazing.
Irresistible. The part where I couldn't help himself. That was the part where I said, I'm a billionaire. I went to Harvard. Excuse me?
Ayanna Pressley, another one. Now, is she a prosecutor? Was she a prosecutor?
I don't know her back. I actually don't think she's an attorney. I think she's just on the side of she's just good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Here she is, first questioning Zuckerberg. As you know, the other day he came out and said, the reason why we did Facebook is because we wanted a situation where people could respond to things like, as opposed to like Iraq. We wanted people to exchange ideas about Iraq because it was such a horrible thing that happened. And here is Ayanna Pressley basically saying,
whether the girls you were raiding opposed the Iraq war or not.
Yeah, here she calls BS.
So, Mr. Zuckerberg, yes or no, in your adult life, have you ever been underbanked? Yes or no?
I'm going to go with no.
Oh, wait, this is not the wrong clip.
It's number
No, I
three.
want
It's
clip number three.
No worries, we got it. Clip number 3. We have both. This one was also pretty great. She had
I want to play that one next.
We'll go to that one. Yeah, okay, we got it.
Your recent speech at Georgetown touched upon how you were affected by the start of the Iraq War when you were in college, and how, quote, if more people had a voice to share their experiences, maybe things would have gone differently. Earlier this year, you announced that Jennifer Newstead would join Facebook as general counsel. Ms. Newstead was the chief deputy in the Office of Legal Policy at the Department of Justice. And in the fall of 2001, it was the day-to-day manager of the Patriot Act in Congress, according to John Yoo, author of the torture memos. Ms. Newstead helped sell Congress on mass surveillance once already, and now she is advising you how to do it again. So yes or no, is the Patriot Act reflective of your views on privacy and free speech?
Congresswoman.
10 seconds left. It's an easy, straightforward question. Is the Patriot Act reflective of your views on privacy and free speech?
Congresswoman, there's a lot in there. No, I do not agree with all of it.
Mr. Zuckerberg, that is not what your hiring choices indicate. And Maya Angelou told us a long time ago, when people reveal to you who they are, believe them. I yield.
Maya Angelou was a 6 on the original rating system.
This is another situation where if she has 8 minutes, she can say, oh, not all of it? Which parts of it?
Right.
Which parts of it do you subscribe to? Because I got news for you. He's lying again. He doesn't know what's in the Patriot Act. He doesn't give a crap. He doesn't. He probably wants that attorney there to know, just like I want somebody who's going to be able to navigate through and find out what we can do in this instance. I mean, it's just this guy. Here is Ayanna Pressley now speaking directly to the issue of the Mark Zuckerberg's Libra, which is his cryptocurrency that he wants to initiate and launch.
Yes or no, in your adult life, have you ever been underbanked? Yes or no?
I'm going to go with no.
When I asked the head of Calibra about why people lacked bank accounts, he said he believed that, quote unquote, identity is a big problem, end quote. Yes or no? Do you agree that authentication is the major hurdle to accessing the financial system?
Congresswoman, I'm not sure. I think it's probably different in different places around the world.
The same World Bank report cited in your Libra white paper finds that almost 2/3 of 1.7 billion people who don't have bank accounts say it's because they lack enough money to open one. So this is not about authentication. This is not about banking costs. This is about a tsunami of hurt that millions are experiencing because of a $1.6 trillion student debt crisis, because of rising healthcare costs and people having to use GoFundMe pages to pay medical bills. This is because of the racial and gender wealth gap. So again, you represent the power, but I don't think you understand the pain. There's underbanking because people are broke. And so let me just ask you this question. Yes or no, is it free to use the Calibra wallet?
Congresswoman, the Calibra wallet isn't a service that is available today. Assuming we were able to launch it, it will be free.
So there is no fee?
Congresswoman, that's the goal, is to make it so that...
So there is no fee?
Congresswoman, the goal is to make it...
Okay, moving on. So if it costs money to buy Libra and costs money to use the Calibra wallet, I fail to see how this helps people with virtually no money. You are attempting to use technology to solve what is inherently an issue of wealth. At the end of the day, you are a business. So what is in the business interest for you here? And do you believe in what you are building? Do you believe in what you are building?
Congresswoman, yes.
So yes or no, would you leave behind your children's inheritance in Libra?
Congresswoman.
Do you believe in what you're building?
Yes, I do. And
would you leave behind your children's inheritance in Libra? I think it's a fair question because
I think it's
you've proven that we cannot trust you with our emails, with our phone numbers. So why should we trust you with our hard-earned money?
Ooh. Poor Zuck, he couldn't even just lie.
Yeah.
That's what I would absolutely, Congresswoman.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to leave all of it, in fact.
All of it.
Yes.
I think two-step identification might actually generate a possibility of income that hadn't been anticipated before in a pre-information economy.
If there was a way to short, if you go on trade sports and vote and bet on whether Libra is going to exist, that's basically, I would take the no on that.
Not looking good.
I think Maxine Waters in her opening remarks didn't even mention Libra. She just got right into, election securities and things like
you
that.
suck. Welcome here to talk about your new fantasy business. Anyways, we hate you.
All right, we have one
You
more.
got a magic coupon plan?
Yeah, you got a new coupon business? Yeah, whatever. Anyway,
Here's one more. Here's one more moment from that. Joyce Beatty, Democrat from Ohio, questions Zuckerberg on the
more black
diversity
women than Zuckerberg's ever been within his life.
Diversity initiative at Facebook.
Now, have you read the report that Laura Murphy sent to you? You've talked a lot about diversity, and you introduced her name about this great study in her work. Have you read it? Do you know what the recommendations were? Do you know when she issued the report? Yes or no?
I've seen the report.
Okay, tell me what the top three
I've seen
things
the
were,
report.
because I have it right here. What were the top three things in her report?
Oh, man.
Somebody talked about lying in this committee. I'm only saying it.
Well, one of them was around housing ads, which we've talked about. The other was around setting up a civil rights task force.
And who's on the civil rights task force?
Sheryl Sandberg is the person she's...
What's civil rights? Okay, we know Cheryl's not really civil rights, so I'm trying to help you here. She's your COO, and I don't think there's anything, and I know Cheryl well, about civil rights in her background. So come better than that for me, if we're going to talk civil rights.
It's an internal task force.
Do you know who the firm that you employ for civil rights is?
Congressman, I don't know.
How could you not know when you have employed the most historical, the largest civil rights firm to deal with issues that are major? And this is what's so frustrating to me. It's almost like you think this is a joke when you have ruined the lives of many people, discriminated against them. Do you know what percentage of African Americans or on Facebook in comparison to majority folks? Do you know what the percentages are?
People using the Facebook.
Yes. Do you know what the percentages are for African Americans?
I don't, because we don't collect the races of people.
Well, it came out in a report in the Pew Research Center that was sent to you. So maybe you just don't read a lot of things that deal with civil rights or African Americans. I have a lot of questions I'm going to send to you that I'm not going to be able to get through, and I would like an answer, because this is appalling and disgusting to me, and I yield back.
Like, I've discovered
What
a
are
lot
the
of them
chances?
are very
What are the
excitable.
chances that Zuckerberg goes home, goes down, takes the elevator down to his subterranean lair, and just starts to plot on how he could take over Congress?
Yeah, I think I don't even think you need to wait till he gets into the aquatic mansion. I think that's.
Can't we just buy them?
There's a clip from Silicon Valley, which is a really good show, where I guess he's more of a Jobs or the guy from I think Cisco Systems, but he's sitting with his lawyers after getting protested, and somebody throws a water balloon at him or something, and he's drying off, and he goes, there was a time when a man like me could have people like that killed. And he's like, times have changed, of course, for the better. And then he pauses, he goes, unless each loop goes back to are you really sure that I can't kill protesters?
It's amazing how much Mark Zuckerberg looks like a student who is lying about having done the reading.
This reminds me of, it's like his gen ed requirement for Soch at Harvard. It's like,
I saw it. I saw the
Congresswoman,
research.
you're not the first African American authority figure that I've had to lie to about caring about this subject. Chances are he won't be the last.
All right, let's try and take a phone call. Let's start here. 509. 509, can you hear me? Hold on, wait a second. Let me see. Are you on the line? Yeah?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello? Yeah.
All right, great.
Yeah.
It's working. All right, great. Who's this?
Hey, it's Ronald Reagan.
Oh, Ronald Reagan. Welcome to the show, Ronald Reagan.
Thanks for having me. I wanted to say I appreciate the show that you do. One the show is that you're willing to push your listeners in ways that might make them uncomfortable. And there's a couple of recent examples of that. First of all, I've been learning a lot from the Epic Times commercials for ads that run before your videos.
Well,
I've been learning a lot about Gate and what Bill Barr's been doing in Italy, and how just basically the truth about the news that you don't hear in other outlets. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Ronald Reagan, I do my best to make sure that everybody gets both sides of the story. So the
right.
Epic Times advertises on our show, I guess.
That's right. And also, this debate with Tim Pool really opened my eyes to a lot of things. First of all, I want to say, as somebody who's mixed myself, I'm part Irish and part Norwegian. I find it your sort of dismissal of his concerns to be really disturbing, because, as you know, the Irish were also slaves at times, according to the Epic News.
He did it.
And it's just offensive the way that you were so dismissive of Tim's concerns. But all
Are you breaking up a little
the
bit?
idea of getting your ethics and your values. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, just the idea that, we should reverse engineer our ethics from the villains of popular movies, I think, is a really interesting idea, and one that I've been trying to implement since I heard it. And are you familiar with the Star Wars franchise?
I am familiar with the Star Wars franchise. Yes, indeed.
So Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side because he was having visions that his lover, I guess his wife, was going to become ill and die, and he was really concerned about that, and his fear of losing her him to the dark side. And I just feel like liberals are often talking a lot about health care and Medicare for all. Sounds a lot like Darth Vader. If you think about it.
So you're saying that because liberals worry about people's health, and that's what drove Anakin Skywalker to the dark side, that's indicative of the fact that, that's why liberals are actually like evil villains. Okay, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was kind of a dickish point, but it's pretty
Darth would have
devastating.
really loved the squad.
I thought it would be harder for you to understand since, you didn't seem very receptive to this idea the other day.
To deontology.
Well, I have to be honest with you. I'm just not familiar with Thanos' work. But I am very familiar with what happened with Star Wars. And so...
yeah. It makes you think, though, right?
It definitely does make me think. Now, were you at you weren't at Occupy Wall Street, right? Because you were on the other side of the country. Did you find that you had nowhere to go because you were part Norwegian and part Irish?
Well, if you look at the groups that are most discriminated right now, it's white men, and then right below that is mixed white men of mixed white backgrounds. And you maybe are being like a regular ass white guy.
Right.
And I think you should try and spend some time in Tim Pool's shoes.
All right, fair enough. Ronald Reagan, thank you for this. Really.
If you can afford
those shoes. And definitely at Occupy, I would go around because there were local Occupy.
I know.
Protests, and I would show up, and they would just be like, "Why are you even here?" That's the thing that definitely happened in real life.
Right. Of course. Occupy was very hostile to people. Maybe it's also possible they thought you were a cop. Ronald Reagan, thank you so much for the call.
Wow.
Yeah, it's possible.
Hard
He
diss
sort
at
of
the end.
He
maybe an administrator.
I'm not trying to sound like a dick here. It's kind of a dickish point, but you sound like Thanos right now.
It's
usually
I am
the bad
like
guy in the
Look,
movie.
that was a Fox News poll.
I may do my entire apartment up in like wallpaper from all the different depictions of me as Thanos that I have seen on
I'm not trying to
Twitter.
ambush you here, but you sound like the corrupted senator in X-Men 3 during the hearings.
It's the difference between utilitarianism and deontology.
He had an ontological perspective, which he brought to bear against.
Oh, we got caller calling from a 478 call line. Who's this?
I thought he was letting you.
Good afternoon. This is the Boba Fett Inventory Report.
I like it.
Boba Fett.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Jeff from Georgia, otherwise known as Boba Fett. Yes, Jeff.
Hey, it's a fantastic show today, man. It's a really great caller right before me. I just want to offer a little practical advice to people. If you're approaching a protest organization as, maybe a regular-ass white guy, but perhaps, show them some photographs of you vandalizing a police cruiser. I've always found that that's a strong icebreaker for me in those situations.
Fair enough.
On a more serious note, Sam, I kind of want to tie some things together. It kind of got buried a little bit last week. We had an excellent Naomi Klein, I believe.
Yep.
On the effects of climate change and the environment. And you've also had some talk with some attorneys about, some of the chemicals that, come about when we manufacture and distribute things. And I actually called a couple weeks ago to talk about, fishing in the Gulf Coast, which is basically not a thing. The beaches were all closed last year. Too much algae bloom. And what all these things have in common to me is that, climate change is a big accelerant to a lot of this. For some reasons, it's the primary driver. But there's also, a lot of other things just related to the way that we distribute and produce goods in this country. If you go to Biloxi, Mississippi right now and you go gambling, and you go yourself to a casino and you order some oysters, the oysters that you get 50 years ago, it would have been plentiful in the Gulf Coast, but now they come all the way from Ronald Reagan's neck of the woods. And to get plane, or they have to go into a train, or they have to go into a truck, and they got to cross the country, right, burning fossil fuels. This same dynamic gets played out over and over and over again with our way we do consumer goods, back and forth with China. Those container ships, they run on some of the dirtiest fossil fuels magical on this planet, and they crisscross the ocean constantly. That's the new efficient, quote-unquote, world that neoliberal is. And I really do believe that the only candidate with any kind of vision that might dismantle some of that is Bernie Sanders. I'm sorry, Elizabeth Warren, but that is the way it is. That's all I wanted to say, Sam.
Jeff from Georgia, Bobo Fett, appreciate the call. Let's take calling from a 716 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello? Is this?
Yeah.
Is it me?
Yeah. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Okay, so this is Jason from Buffalo.
Jason from Buffalo.
I'll give you like a short Jason from Buffalo. I'll give you a short background. So I'm from South Korea originally, which is like literally 100 times more conservative than like. Over time, like my view has changed. I really support Bernie Sanders overall.
Yeah.
Think about this: the most conservative, like one of the most conservative countries in the world, has the universal healthcare system. And I'm telling this to other Asians around Buffalo, like that, like the only person who are supporting this is Bernie Sanders, but they're so blinded by Andrew Yang's. They're so polarized. You know what I mean? Like all the Asians are always going for Yang Gang, and I point out case by case, like how Andrew Yang will eventually throw off people off their Social Security, like the marginalized, you know, those marginalized people with disabilities, throw them off their health care and all that stuff. They don't care. They're always going for the $1,000 option. Do you know like any other way I could convince them?
Well, what that $1,000 is going to end up having to go pay for is health insurance, because he's not pushing for a Medicare for all plan. And I mean, I think, you know, they can be enamored with the UBI. I think, like, you know, there's if it was something that he was going to implement in with other things, it might be a decent idea. But I think ultimately, they're not going to have the opportunity to vote for Andrew Yang in the general election. And I think in terms of pushing them towards Bernie, I think it's a question of dealing with the structural issues that exist. He may give $1,000, but if he's pouring this money into a system that is still structured as is, the system's just going to absorb that cash in one form or another. And if he begins to, if he uses that as an excuse to chip away at the rest of the social safety net, then ultimately 5, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, as the system basically absorbs that money, healthcare costs continue to go up, you know, old age homes, nursing homes get expensive. That money will all be eaten up, and there won't be a social safety net that exists. So I think, you know, short term it might be an interesting idea, but long term, based upon what he has expressed, you know, in terms of what it will replace, I think it's a problem. I mean, you know.
And he explicitly said, finally, that he does not support
Medicare for all. I agree with everything you're saying, and like I definitely have explained this kind of things to those people. Like, I'm gonna have to give props to Kyle Kalinske from Secular Talk about this. Like, he laid out in details how much, like, you know, Andrew Yang, he said this on the record. Like, he hopes that this UBI replaces everything, and I just do not get any sense into these people. Like, even if I describe overall, these structural changes are way more important than your $1,000 per month allowance.
Well, I mean, I would just ask him, how much are you paying in health insurance right now?
Okay, that's pretty good. I have one more thing to say, then.
Yeah.
On your case of impeachment, I would like to add also props to Kyle from Secular Talk. He's wiser to tie the emolument case to illegal genocide, not even a war in Yemen, where they're literally providing weapons to Saudi Arabia through emolument clause, and then Trump lets down to the sanctions, the legislations that, that says we should stop providing weapons to Saudi Arabia. I don't know why. I mean, I know why Democrats aren't going for that, because most of them are also corrupt, doing backroom smoke-filled rooms deal with them. So I guess that's why. But yeah.
Well, I just don't know that you can impeach a president based upon his veto of legislation. But I mean, it was legislation that the Democrats were. I mean, in this instance, the Democrats did a pretty good job of passing that legislation. But appreciate the call. Maybe I'll check out what that argument is.
The argument is that I just want to be a touch specific, because I do think some Democrats undermined particularly what Roe Conner wrote in the House, and obviously the Senate version that Sanders wrote is strong. But I think what Kyle's saying is that you might be able to directly tie, as an example, just arms deals generally with Saudi Arabia to basically like royal family members staying in Trump hotels. So I think it actually could get.
Oh, you mean that it's a quid pro quo?
Yeah, I think that's what he's saying. If I understand him correctly,
I think that may be the case. And I think they should continue to investigate. I don't know that they have any evidence to show that quid pro quo, but the emoluments are there.
Right.
You don't need the other part. In terms of an article of impeachment, it may be the case that his entire foreign policy is a function of payoffs. I mean, it's conceivable.
All of it.
It's conceivable what's happening in Turkey right now is a function of that.
Oh,
I should
there's
say
no
in
doubt.
northern Syria.
No doubt. In my mind.
Maybe the
I
Kurds
would
can all go
suspect
to
so.
Trump properties.
Yeah,
But in
maybe
terms
if you put a Trump casino in your little anarchist feminist experiment.
Oh, so that dude I talked about yesterday?
Which
the one who I walked away from?
Oh yeah, the healthcare guy.
Well, yeah, he's sort of stalking me right now.
Ooh.
As we speak?
Bring him on the show.
Could be go time.
Yeah, ambush him.
Do you want me to do that?
Jesse
Pick
Waters
up the
him,
iPad,
bro.
bring your microphone.
Jesse Waters.
Man on the
he
street.
came by and he said hi, but I also let's see.
F
you want me
bro.
to get him to sit down? Here he is. He's. Should we do this? Let me see if
You hear
he
your
walks
music?
by.
You have a mission, Sam.
He's walking around. He's getting swag. That's what a lot of people do at this point. They get the they get the swag from all the vendors. All right, here he is. Hold on. Slow down. Oh,
Does he hear the
going for
music?
another mimosa. Hey, excuse me. So I'm doing my show. Did I tell you I did do a show? Okay. Do you wanna come on? Because I was talking in general that I was
make sure the mimosa's in the show.
having have a seat here. You're on camera. So just to let you know.
Sure. No problem.
All right, here, come on, go right in here.
All right.
Now we were, I've been referencing that I've been having political conversations with people here.
Yes.
And you and I had a conversation the other night.
Quite a good conversation, actually, the other night. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so we were talking about healthcare.
Yes.
Right. And you were making the argument that Medicare for all not good.
I was saying it was a not good overall solution. I think, unfortunately, you need to keep the private entities in the game as well.
Why is that unfortunate?
Well, simply, Medicare for all, if it would work and provide still the best level of service, would be a great thing. Unfortunately, the government, when you leave it to a single entity, almost never does anything as well as the private sector, in my opinion. So if you have a number of competing companies, you have a level of service, a level of care, and you reduce the amount of cost involved.
In the insurance companies?
Yes.
Now, why has that not actually happened? Why has insurance gone up every single year that it has been in existence?
Well, I mean, if you look at the highest, most recent increases was actually because of the demand placed on it by the Affordable Care Act.
How so?
Well, when you're requiring a minimum level of care that is significantly higher than what was provided their lowest level entry product before, of course, if you have to pay for, 2 wellness visits a year, which, by the way, is not a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying that providing these services is bad, but when you force it on them, of course, the cost is going to go up.
Okay, and how do you explain the cost going up at such a rapid rate, even a greater rate, than since the Affordable Care Act was imposed?
You said even before that?
Yeah, before the Affordable Care Act.
Listen,
if you look at 2000 to 2014, the rate of increase in the cost of health insurance is greater than it's been since the advent of Obamacare.
That's not true. It's gone the steepest.
No, it's absolutely
the two steepest increases were directly after Obamacare. That being said, it has been going up significantly. You're right.
Okay, so how do you reconcile that? If it's because of Obamacare that
I
we
did
have
not say it's because of Obamacare. I said that it was a contributing factor over the past couple of years. That
So-
being said, I'm not saying the system
But wait,
isn't
wait,
broken.
wait. I'm just asking you, because you said that the more insurance companies you have, as opposed to a single payer system, the price goes down. But there's no example that you can cite in the history of us having multiple insurance companies in this field that prices have gone down.
This is actually relatively decent, except it's not true at all. The level of coverage and the cost literally was going down year over year over year. Now the complaint was that it was going up, which is a complete and utter fallacy.
You're telling me that insurance prices...
Give me any time over an 8-year period where it didn't go up, except outside of the last 10 years. Prior to that, any 5 to 8 year period where it didn't go up more than 20% over the entire period.
I'm not sure I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Give me when were the last significant increases over 10% per year in healthcare, and mark them out. And if you go out, you will find nearly no example of that prior to the end of the 90s.
Okay, let's see if I can. Cost of health insurance. Let's see if I can do this get some historical health insurance price history from 2005 to 2019.
All right, we're talking about the end of the 90s prior to that. So prior to this whole turnaround in the market, and when you had the market crash effective rates, blah, 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 if you look at the overall generation of costs as it relates to healthcare prior to this becoming a big deal.
Prior to this becoming a big deal.
We had great prices. It was covered by and everybody was doing well. Then all of a sudden it became an issue, and all of a sudden prices went up because everybody, when you put that level of distrust in the industry and you start to attack the industry, I mean, you wind up with, what Obama did.
So you're saying that costs went up, health insurance costs went up because people didn't trust health insurance?
No, it's because health insurance didn't trust the government. I mean, it's the same thing. Look at how Obama ruined the economy. It's very simple.
Obama ruined the economy.
Absolutely. I mean, come on. Ask any economist ever.
What?
Okay, all right. How did he not? Who ruined it? Let's figure this out. Who ruined the economy?
Well, you know that the economy crashed before he was president.
Yes, but you know that he oversaw the worst recovery ever in this country's history, and it was purposefully done.
He purposefully made a bad recovery. So he didn't ruin the economy. He just didn't recover it as well as...
He did everything he could to make sure that it did not recover quickly.
Why did he do that?
Have you read the Cloward-Piven thesis?
Excuse me?
Have you read Cloward-Piven?
I have not read Cloward-Piven.
Okay, well, then you're not a journalist, because, that is the Democratic strategy. It is the underlying document. And if you actually read it, or anybody that leans left actually bothered to do some research, you would see this.
So Obama came in and was executing the Cloward-Piven.
Yes, and if you read it, it's literally, it outlines everything.
And all the people around him, all these bankers from Citibank and this, they subscribe to the same Cloward-Piven.
No, of course not. But see, here's the thing. you keep looking at it and you're trying to blame everybody else, but you want to completely just give him this God complex where he could do nothing wrong. But you said the other night the government impacts the economy, right? You said the government is the biggest impactor of the economy, which is garbage.
What?
But if you subscribe to that theory, then you can't not blame Obama for the stale recovery. You can't sit there and say he had nothing to do with it, and then also say that
I didn't say that he had nothing to do with it. The stimulus should have been bigger.
When has the stimulus ever worked?
Every time it's been implemented.
Short term, never long term. It's never had any long term benefit whatsoever.
What? The economy has recovered.
It was the slowest recovery ever in this country's history.
Well, it was the second largest.
Why is it that U.S. corporations had the largest cash reserves in U.S. history throughout the beginning of the Obama presidency, yet didn't invest? Because they were concerned about the direction of the country, and because there was very limited actual knowledge given as to what the changes in taxes were going to be. So therefore, they could not invest. This was every top economist came out and said this and begged.
Which top economists?
Read any economic. I mean, literally from Bloomberg, who came out freaking saying it, who you would not expect to literally. I mean, every top CEO was saying, "Listen, we want to invest, we want to grow."
The top CEOs.
Yes.
Not economists.
Yes, economists as well. The CEOs of the company, their head CFOs were coming out saying, "Listen, we want to invest."
Their chief financial officers.
Yes.
Who were talking about the.
Have you done any research on this?
No.
Is the question. Okay, so you have absolutely no knowledge of the subject, but you're arguing.
I have no knowledge of the subject.
Okay, so why are you arguing the subject?
I'm actually being facetious. I mean, I have not read the Cloward Priven thing. I've got to do more research. But what about all the spending and stimulus that we had during the Great Depression?
Okay, so you're an FDR guy. You want to know what? There was a need for it, and I would have no problem putting money into, redoing bridges, things like that. These are valid things. Obama, my shovel-ready jobs, and then a year and a half later says, "Oh yeah, there is no such thing as a shovel-ready job," and $800 billion somehow disappeared.
Well, how much of that $800 billion were tax cuts?
Not that much of it.
Not that much of it?
I mean, the spending? No, he spent $800 billion that you could not find. I mean, it was money spent. We're not talking tax cuts. This is money spent.
Okay. So now, the stimulus you say was 800. Hold on for 1 second, because as you say, it's very important to do research, right?
Right.
And we're going to talk about the stimulus, and we're gonna look it up together here. How much was the stimulus of 2009?
Well, hold on. Now you're talking the stimulus. We're talking spending versus the stimulus package.
Yes. Well, no, we're talking about I asked you. Hold on for 1 second, okay? I asked you how much of the stimulus was tax cuts. You say it's $800 billion stimulus. I think it's closer to 770, but let's not be picky. And the question is, how much of that was tax cuts, and how much of it was actual spending? From the New York Post, as you know, not a liberal newspaper.
No, not terribly.
Right? More than half of the package was tax cuts. Was in tax cuts.
Okay.
What is half of 800 billion?
400 billion.
400 billion.
Okay.
So 400 billion of that was tax cuts. Now, I'm surprised you didn't know that because of all the
that's not what we were talking about spending. We moved past that. It's tax cuts. It did nothing. What did the stimulus do? Where did it get us?
Well, it kept us from going into a deeper recession.
Define that. I mean, the entire thing with your side is we didn't do anything good, but we stopped this catastrophic thing that we can never ever actually quantify. That's why is it from the left? It's always
there were millions of
jobs that were lost.
Why
is it on the left? You have never actually done anything. It's always just if you hadn't have done what you did, it would have been worse. I've never actually heard a Democrat go, we actually did something good and we had a positive benefit. We did something, but it would have been worse if we didn't do it.
Expanded Medicaid under the ACA, and there's hard data.
What level of results has that had versus the
it has increased the health of people.
Really? Can you show me any marginal increase?
Yes, I can actually just, there was new studies that just came out. Impact of Medicaid expansion. We'll just look at that on health. I Google that, and it was just a reports.
And where is this coming from, and what does it say? I mean, let's see. How is it drastically increased? Like I said, the wellness things, there's been a couple. But again, that's not the Medicaid expansion. That's the forcing of insurance companies to provide this. So it's
no, I understand.
You're looking at two different variants of.
No, you're looking at two different variants. I didn't bring that up. That was what you just said. I didn't.
Okay, but you're saying the overall impact on health, but is it just the Medicaid expansion? If you are narrowing it down just to the Medicaid expansion, let's hear some actual.
Yeah, I'm going to. I've just found it right here. This is University of Michigan Health. Do you consider that like a left-wing?
I mean, come on. I don't really care that much. I don't tend to subscribe to the whole left, friggin' right.
Okay, right. Anyways, it says benefits for mind, body, and work ability seen in Medicaid expansion. New findings about low-income adults with behavioral health conditions, mental health, and substance abuse disorders suggest importance of continuous coverage. Expanding Medicaid to more low-income adults helped them feel healthier, do a better job at work or job search in just 1 year after they got their new health coverage, a University of Michigan study finds. I can find more stuff. That was
is there any number in there that gives any level of quantifiable value?
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess we could look through the actual study. But I'm telling you, there's a paper. It says in a new paper in the Journal of Psychiatric Services.
Okay, so it's all psychiatric. Absolutely. All right. So offering addiction services to people, 100% behind that.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not Medicaid, we were just saying.
Medicaid, I don't think it has had a drastic increase. And honestly, are these people that would not have had health care before? Probably not. Not a large majority.
Medicaid is only available to people who can't afford health care.
That's a load of crap.
What?
That's a load of crap.
What do you mean? Who's eligible for Medicaid in the expansion?
Well, they just said low-income people. Now, if you
No. Let me ask you, because you have done a lot of research on this, and so I'm asking you, who's eligible for Medicaid?
All right, for Medicaid, I think it's under $28,000 a year.
Do you know what level of poverty?
It goes up to the poverty level plus 10%.
For the expansion of Medicaid, 133% of poverty.
Huh?
133% of poverty. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I said plus 10%. All right.
Right.
So,
I mean, you're 20. It's not that far off, I guess. Well, look. I think this has been interesting, but we've got to wrap up the show.
I'm hungover as shit from last night anyway.
Yeah,
so.
No, I understand.
But hey, it was a pleasure anyway.
Yeah, you too. All right, take it easy. Yeah, don't forget your drink. Here you go. Oh, I didn't realize there was nothing left. Okay. There you go.
Wow.
Yep. So
that's what Reagan was talking about with all those new perspectives you're bringing in.
I'm sorry, folks, but that one stuck out for me. Of the various.
What the Piven Cloward strategy is, Sam. Jesus.
I didn't. Was he talking about Francis?
Yes, that was Glenn Beck's whole theory of the Obama administration.
I know it.
I thought that was like right.
I was relieved he wasn't into the whole left versus right thing, though.
That was cool, though. He didn't really subscribe to that.
Yeah.
Which made it more interesting.
Yeah.
That guy was pretty cool. I hope the left can learn from that level of I like how liberals are always like, I don't know if I have my facts right. I gotta be careful. Come on, it's not as eligible for Medicaid. Come on, yeah, I'm drunk.
We already went past stimulus.
Yeah, we went past that.
We're so past that, man.
It's the Cloward strategy, bro.
All right. I got time for one more. One more call. Call
Did you
from
see
a
the
5-7
that Brendan used?
No, oh God, no! What was it?
Sam's new friend. Met at the blackjack table.
Oh my God. calling from a 570 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Are you there? 570? I hear you moving. Are you there? All right, you're gone. One more. It's calling from a 702 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Who is this and where are you calling from?
Oh, hi. I'm Rustem from Brooklyn.
I can't. What was your name again?
Rustem from Brooklyn.
Rustem from Brooklyn. Okay. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to say, I'm a comic book movie fan, so I just want to say that Tim Pool's argument was really stupid because Thanos is not a utilitarian, actually. And, in fact, Iron Man, who is the main hero of the Avengers, is actually utilitarian. So, by his own logic,
That's a total lie.
The hero of the movie.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to look into that for our next exchange of ideas.
There's a good video about this from Kyle Colgren. It's called The Avengers Between the Lines. It kind of analyzes all the ideologies of different Avengers, so it's pretty good.
Avengers Between the Lines? Is that what it is?
Fuck.
Yeah, from Kyle Colgren. That's a YouTube channel.
Between the Lines. Kyle.
Incidentally, Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola have said some interesting things about Avengers movies recently.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you. On that note.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Just, folks, we don't have time for any more calls. We got to get going. Michael will be doing the show tomorrow. I'll be traveling.
You'll probably be hanging out with that guy.
Yeah, we're going to go, just let it rip tonight.
I don't know. He kept it together for 15 minutes. Whatever. University of Michigan.
Okay. Look, I mean,
I'm drunk.
I don't get in the. Yeah, exactly. And then it was just, I'm so hungover. I literally, in the time that I saw him almost walk over here, I saw him drink a Bloody Mary and a mimosa.
That guy is cool.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah. It is, but not in this country, actually. You gotta go to a different country. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. Michael will be doing the show tomorrow. I'll be back in studio on Monday.
Total Thanos argument.
Until then, I've got to go out and do some research on my Marvel Comics philosophies.
That's definitely the next one.
Thanos was not a utilitarian.
Apparently, you are wrong, Tim.
You're even wrong on the stupid movies that you rot your brain with all day.
Folks, see you tomorrow.
To get to where I want, but I know